The manila envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning in September, wedged between a water bill and a grocery store circular. No return address, just my name, Russell Brennan, written across the front in careful block letters. I almost threw it away, thinking it was junk mail or maybe another refinancing offer. But something about the weight of it, the quality of the paper, made me pause. I was alone in the kitchen. Sophie had left for her job at Meridian Pharmaceuticals an hour earlier, and Tyler, our 15-year-old son, had caught his usual ride to school with the neighbor's kid. The morning sun slanted through the blinds, creating parallel lines across our granite countertop, the one Sophie had insisted we needed during last year's renovation, even though it cost twice our budget. Inside the envelope were 17 photographs. High-quality prints, not cheap drugstore copies. My coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the tile floor as I spread them across the counter. The brown liquid pooled around my feet, but I couldn't move. Each photo showed my wife of 12 years entering or leaving different hotels across Phoenix. The Marriott downtown with its distinctive glass facade. The Hilton by the airport where we'd once attended a wedding. The boutique Rosewood Hotel that advertised couples packages in the Sunday paper. Even a budget inn on the outskirts of town that I'd never known existed. Someone had written dates on the backs in the same careful block letters. March 3rd, May 18th, June 9th, July 22nd, August 30th. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone, pulling up the calendar with fingers that suddenly felt numb. March 3rd. I remembered it instantly. We'd had that massive fight about me forgetting our anniversary dinner. I'd been consumed with a project deadline, a shopping center development in Tempe that was hemorrhaging money. Sophie had made reservations at that French place she loved, bought a new dress, arranged for Tyler to stay at a friend's house. And I'd completely forgotten, staying at the office until 9 p.m. She'd thrown a plate when I finally got home. An actual dinner plate, her grandmother's china, which exploded against the wall behind my head. She called me thoughtless, selfish, accused me of caring more about concrete and steel than our marriage. She'd packed a bag while sobbing dramatically, makeup running in black streams down her face. "I'm going to Patricia's," she'd announced, yanking her suitcase down the stairs so hard it left a scuff mark on the wall. "I need space to think about whether this marriage is worth saving." Patricia was her older sister in Scottsdale, a successful real estate agent with a guest house behind her pool. Sophie always went there during our fights to gain perspective and process her emotions. She'd been doing it for years, ever since Tyler was in elementary school. May 18th. That had been about Tyler's failing grade in algebra. Report cards had come home, and Tyler had hidden his for 3 days before we found it crumpled in his backpack. Sophie blamed my work schedule, said I was never around to help with homework. I blamed her coddling, pointed out that she did Tyler's assignments for him instead of making him learn. The argument had escalated until Sophie was screaming about my failures as a father, comparing me to her own absent dad. She'd stormed out around the 8 p.m., tires squealing in the driveway. 3 days at Patricia's, returning with a list of family counselors we should consider. July 22nd, credit card bills. I'd opened the statement to find $3,000 in charges I didn't recognize. When I'd asked Sophie about them, she'd turned it into an attack on my controlling nature, my need to monitor every penny. The fight had spiraled into accusations about financial priorities, my mother's loan 2 years ago, her spending on Tyler's tennis lessons. She'd left that night too. Patricia's guest house, 3 days, returning with apologies and a spreadsheet of our monthly expenses that she'd worked on with Patricia's help. August 30th, just 2 weeks ago. The most recent fight, still fresh in my memory. My mother had called during dinner wanting to visit for Thanksgiving. She'd suggested staying for a week, maybe 2. Sophie's reaction had been instant and volcanic. "Your mother hates me," she'd screamed, though my mother had never said an unkind word about her. "She judges everything I do, the way I cook, the way I raise Tyler, the way I decorate." The fight had seemed to come from nowhere. 0 to nuclear in minutes. Sophie had been in the bedroom packing before I could even process what was happening. Another trip to Patricia's, another cooling off period. But now, staring at the photos, I saw the truth. Every single date matched a fight. Every fight had ended with Sophie leaving for Patricia's house. And every cooling off period had actually been this. The most recent photo drew my attention like a magnet. August 30th, timestamp reading 8:47 p.m. Sophie entering the Rosewood Hotel wearing the same clothes she'd angrily packed. Her designer jeans, the cashmere sweater I'd bought her for Christmas, her Louis Vuitton bag slung over her shoulder. But her expression was completely different from when she'd left our house 40 minutes earlier. No tears, no anger, no distress. Instead, her face showed anticipation, excitement, the look she used to give me when we were dating, when I'd pick her up for dinner at a new restaurant. In the background, barely visible through the hotel's glass doors, was a man holding the door. Just a hand and partial sleeve of a charcoal suit, but I noticed the watch on his wrist, a distinctive gold Rolex with a black face. My stomach lurched with recognition. I'd seen that watch before, multiple times. At Sophie's company Christmas party last December, gleaming under the ballroom lights. On the wrist of David Castell, the Vice President of Strategic Development at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Sophie's direct supervisor for the past 3 years. David Castell, who had shaken my hand at that party with a firm grip and perfect smile, telling me how lucky I was to have such a talented and dedicated wife. David Castell, who had sent us a bottle of wine for our anniversary, the one I'd forgotten. David Castell, recently divorced, with his square jaw and silver temples, who looked like he'd stepped out of a men's magazine. I sank into a kitchen chair, my legs suddenly unable to support my weight. The coffee was still spreading across the floor, seeping into the grout line Sophie had insisted be white because it looked cleaner. Everything in our kitchen, in our house, had been Sophie's choice. I'd just paid for it all. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Patricia's number was there, tagged as sister-in-law, with a photo from last year's barbecue. Before I could lose my nerve, I pressed call. "Hey, Russell." Patricia's voice was warm, cheerful. "How's my favorite brother-in-law?" Actually, my only brother-in-law, but still my favorite. "Hey, Pat." I forced casualness into my tone, though my throat felt like sandpaper. "Quick question. Sophie left her iPad at your place last time she visited. When was that again? I want to mail it to her office as a surprise." There was a pause. I could hear Patricia's TV in the background, some morning talk show. "Russell, what are you talking about?" "Sophie hasn't stayed here since Christmas. That was almost 10 months ago. We did lunch in Scottsdale maybe 2 months ago, but she didn't come to the house." The kitchen tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, the wood grain pressing into my palms. "Christmas? Yeah, remember? You both came for my party. You wore that horrible sweater your mother gave you as a joke. Russell, are you okay? You sound strange." I must be confused. Maybe she left it somewhere else." "Is everything all right? Is Sophie okay?" "Everything's fine," I lied, the words ash in my mouth. "Just mixed up my dates. You know how it is, getting older, memory going." "You're 38, Russell. If your memory's going, we're all in trouble." She laughed, but there was concern underneath. "Are you sure everything's okay?" "Absolutely." "Hey, I've got to run, work stuff." "Okay, but Russell, if something's wrong, you can talk to me. Sophie's my sister, but your family too." I hung up and stared at the photos spread across the counter like evidence in a crime scene, which I suppose they were. Every cooling off period, every sisterly refuge, every break to gain perspective had been a lie. Not a white lie, not a small deception, but an elaborate, calculated performance. But who took these pictures? Who knew to document these specific dates? Who had been watching Sophie closely enough to capture her at multiple hotels over months? The angles suggested someone following at a distance, using a telephoto lens. Professional surveillance, not casual snapshots. I examined each photo more carefully, looking for clues. The compositions were consistent, always showing Sophie clearly, always from a similar distance, always capturing the hotel entrance in frame. Someone had hired a private investigator. But who? And why send them to me now, anonymously? I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. My project manager, Steve, was surprised. "You sound terrible," he said, though I'd tried to keep my voice normal. "Take all the time you need. The Tempe site can manage without you for a day." I spent the morning constructing a timeline using our shared Google Calendar and my own memory. I created a spreadsheet on my laptop, documenting every major fight from the past 3 years. The pattern emerged like a horrible magic trick, revealing its secret. Approximately every 6 to 8 weeks, we would have a major blowout. The triggers varied: finances, parenting, in-laws, household duties, work stress. But Sophie's reaction was consistent: explosive anger that seemed disproportionate to the cause. Personal attacks that cut deep, using intimate knowledge as weapons. Dramatic bag packing with specific items she'd claim to need for thinking. Departure to Patricia's for exactly 2 to 3 days, never longer, never shorter. She'd return calmer but not apologetic, more like someone who'd completed a task than someone who'd processed emotions. She'd offer measured acknowledgments of her part in the fight, while subtly reinforcing that I'd driven her to the edge. She'd suggest communication exercises from articles she'd read at Patricia's, intimacy-building activities she'd discussed with her sister, ways to reconnect that always felt slightly rehearsed. The reconciliation afterward was always intense. Sophie would seem energized, passionate, like she was channeling some newfound vitality into our bedroom. I'd attributed it to the relief of reunion, the classic makeup romance. Now I wondered whose touch she was really remembering, whose words echoed in her enthusiasm. "We need to work on us," she'd say afterward, curled against me in our king-sized bed, her hand tracing patterns on my chest. "Maybe we should see someone professional." That's how we'd ended up in Dr. Elena Markov's office twice a month for the past 2 years. $800 a month for conflict resolution strategies, de-escalation techniques, fair fighting rules. Sophie had been an eager participant, taking notes in a leather journal, suggesting homework exercises, seeming genuinely committed to improvement. Dr. Markov had praised our dedication. "Many couples wait until it's too late," she'd said during our last session. "You're being proactive about your relationship health." But the fights had continued. In fact, studying my timeline, I could see they'd become more efficient. Earlier arguments from 3 years ago might last hours, meandering through various grievances, sometimes resolving without Sophie leaving. Recent fights were surgical strikes. Sophie would identify a trigger point, escalate rapidly, and be out the door within 90 minutes. She'd perfected the art of explosive departure. I pulled our bank statements online, searching for evidence. The credit cards showed no hotel charges, but then they wouldn't if she was paying cash or if David was covering the costs. But there were patterns. ATM withdrawals, always $300 to $400 taken the day before each major fight. Cash that couldn't be traced. I checked gas purchases. No charges between our house and Patricia's place in Scottsdale. No charges near Patricia's neighborhood at all. But there were charges at gas stations near the hotels in the photos. Purchases of water or snacks that placed Sophie in those areas at the right times. Her work schedule revealed another pattern. Sophie often took personal days immediately after returning from Patricia's, claiming she needed to readjust before facing work stress. But if she'd been at hotels with David, her boss, why would she need recovery time from work? Unless the personal days were part of the deception, time to transition from affair to marriage, to reset her performance. I went deeper, accessing Sophie's work calendar through our shared computer. She'd saved her passwords, trusting me not to snoop. David Castell had recurring, strategic planning sessions that aligned with Sophie's absences. Tuesday through Thursday, blocks marked off-site meeting or vendor review or simply development workshop. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. "Thinking of you. Rough morning at work. David being impossible about the Q3 reports. Can't wait to come home to someone who actually appreciates me. Love you." The casual mention of David made bile rise in my throat. The ease of the deception, texting her husband about her lover, complaining about the man she was sleeping with as if he were just another workplace irritation. I texted back, "Love you too. Home early if you want to talk about it." Rain check? Gym tonight with Melissa, then might grab drinks. Don't wait up. Melissa was from her office, another marketing manager. I wondered if she was real alibi or unwitting accomplice. How many people were involved in maintaining Sophie's double life? That afternoon, I drove to Patricia's house in Scottsdale. I needed to be sure, needed to see the guest house Sophie had supposedly spent so many nights in. Patricia's Mercedes wasn't in the driveway. She'd be showing houses until evening. The spare key was under the ceramic frog where it had always been, a family joke about security. The guest house was pristine, untouched. A layer of dust on the coffee table. The bed perfectly made with hospital corners, decorative pillows that hadn't been moved in months. The bathroom held no toiletries, no sign of regular use. The mini fridge was empty except for bottled water, expiration dates from last year. I sat on the bed, the mattress firm and unwelcoming. Sophie had described this space so vividly, reading by the pool, making tea in the kitchenette, having long talks with Patricia on the tiny patio. All fiction, she'd constructed an entire alternate reality, complete with sensory details and emotional color. My phone rang. James Morrison, my friend since college, now a successful divorce attorney. Russell, hey, you missed poker last week. Everything okay? I need a recommendation, I said without preamble. Private investigator, the best you know. There was a pause. James had heard this request before, many times. Russell, whatever you're thinking, be sure you want to know. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed, I know. But this door's already open. I just need to see what's on the other side. Carla Rodriguez, former FBI, specialized in surveillance and financial crimes. She's expensive but thorough. And Russell? She's discreet. Whatever she finds stays between you and her unless you decide otherwise. He texted me her number. I called immediately. Ms. Rodriguez, my name is Russell Brennan. James Morrison referred me. I need your help. Can you meet today? Her voice was professional, giving nothing away. Yes. Where? Copper Star Coffee on 7th Avenue. 4 p.m. Bring everything you have. Carla Rodriguez was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that missed nothing. She chose a corner table with sightlines to both entrances, her back to the wall. Former FBI indeed. I showed her the envelope, the photos, explained the pattern I'd discovered. She examined each image with a jeweler's loupe she pulled from her bag. Professional surveillance, she confirmed. Telephoto lens, probably 300 millimeters or longer. Consistent positioning suggests someone who knew her schedule, knew where to wait. The timestamps are from the camera, not added later. These are originals, not copies. Can you find out who took them? I can find out everything. She slid the photos back across the table. But Mr. Brennan, are you prepared for everything? Once we start this investigation, we follow it wherever it leads. Sometimes clients think they want the truth until they get it. I already know my wife is having an affair. What could be worse? Carla's expression suggested she'd heard that question before and had answers I wouldn't like. My retainer is $5,000. I'll need access to financial records, phone records if you can get them, and any other documentation you have. I'll also need to conduct surveillance going forward. Are you prepared for that? Watching your wife? Having her watched? I wrote the check without hesitation. I need to know everything. Not just the affair, but the scope of it. Who else knows? Who's helping her? How long has this been going on? I'll start immediately. Keep living normally. Don't confront her. Don't change your patterns. If she suspects you know, she'll alter her behavior and make my job harder. There's something else, I said, then told her about David Castell, the watch, the connection to Sophie's work. Carla made notes in a small notebook. VP at her company. That's useful. Corporate structure means digital trails, expense accounts, calendar systems. Harder for them to hide. How long until you have answers? Preliminary report within a week. Full investigation might take a month. Can you maintain normalcy that long? I thought about going home, eating dinner with Sophie, sleeping beside her, pretending everything was fine while she pretended the same thing for different reasons. I can pretend, I said. I'm learning that's something I'm married to an expert at. That evening was torture. Sophie came home from her gym session, glowing with exercise or something else. She'd changed clothes. The gym outfit was perfect, even down to the right amount of sweat at the collar. But there was something else, an energy I now recognized. The slightly dilated pupils, the barely there smile, the way she hummed while making dinner. Good workout, I asked, chopping vegetables for the salad. The best. Melissa's trainer is amazing. I might book some sessions with him. I wondered if Melissa even existed or if she was another fiction. That's great. You seem happy. Sophie wrapped her arms around me from behind, pressing against my back. I am happy. I was thinking about us today, about how lucky we are. Sure, we have our problems, but what couple doesn't? The important thing is we always find our way back to each other. The words were perfect, exactly what a devoted wife would say. But knowing what I knew, I could hear the script underneath, the rehearsed quality of the sentiment. Tyler came thundering down the stairs, saving me from responding. What's for dinner? I'm starving. Chicken stir-fry, Sophie said, ruffling his hair. Your favorite? Actually, my favorite is tacos, Tyler said, grabbing a water from the fridge. Since when? Since like 2 years ago? You always make stir-fry after you and Dad fight in makeup. It's like clockwork. Sophie and I exchanged glances. Even our son had noticed the pattern. We haven't fought recently, Sophie said carefully. You were at Aunt Pat's 2 weeks ago, Tyler pointed out. The Thanksgiving thing with Grandma? Ring any bells? That wasn't a fight, Sophie said. I just needed some space to think. Tyler shrugged, teenager style. Whatever. Can I eat in my room? I have a huge history test tomorrow. Fine, Sophie said, but I could see her calculating, wondering what else Tyler had observed. After Tyler left, we ate in a relative silence. I studied Sophie across the table, looking for signs of deception I'd missed for years. The way she checked her phone exactly every 15 minutes. How she'd positioned herself to see the screen while I couldn't. The small smile when a message arrived, quickly suppressed. "Want to watch something?" she asked after dinner. "We could continue that British mystery series?" "Sure. Normal. Act normal." We sat on the couch, Sophie curled against me, her head on my shoulder. On screen, detectives unraveled an elaborate murder plot, finding clues in seemingly innocent details. I wondered if Sophie saw the irony. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it casually. Just Mom, asking about Thanksgiving. But I'd seen the name on the screen and the reflection on the TV. David. Tell her we'd love to have her, I said. Really? Even with your mother coming? The more the merrier. We should do a big family thing. Patricia too. Make it special. Sophie shifted, looking up at me. That's not really necessary. You know how Patricia and Mom get when they're together. All that competition about whose life is more perfect. I think it would be nice. We haven't all been together since last Christmas. I could feel Sophie's tension, the calculation happening behind her eyes. A big family Thanksgiving would disrupt whatever schedule she had with David. But opposing it would seem strange, ungrateful. I'll ask them, she said finally. But don't blame me if it's a disaster. It won't be. We'll make it perfect. Sophie's phone buzzed again. This time she didn't look at it, but I felt her want to, the effort it took to ignore it. David again, probably wondering why she hadn't responded. The next 3 days passed in surreal normalcy. Sophie went to work, came home, made dinner, helped Tyler with homework, watched TV with me, made love with the lights off. But now I noticed everything. The extra shower she took some evenings, the way she did laundry more frequently, washing clothes that didn't seem dirty, the new lingerie in her drawer, price tags removed but telltale fold lines showing they'd never been worn. At least not for me. Carla called on Thursday afternoon while Sophie was at work. Can you meet? I have preliminary information. We met at a different coffee shop, this one in Tempe near my office. Carla had a folder thick with documents. The photos came from another private investigator, she began without preamble. Marcus Webb works out of Paradise Valley, High-end clientele, mostly divorce cases. He was hired by Monica Castell. Castell, as in David Castell's ex-wife. They divorced 2 years ago, but there's a morality clause in their agreement. No overnight guests while their teenage daughters are in his custody. Monica suspected violations. She hired Webb to follow David, but he found more than expected. Carla laid out new photos. David entering the same hotels, different days, and not just with Sophie, a blonde woman at the Marriott, a redhead at a Sheraton I hadn't seen before. Your wife is part of a rotation, Carla said bluntly. David has multiple women scheduled throughout the week. Sophie appears to be Tuesday through Thursday. This woman, she pointed to the blonde, is weekends. The redhead is Mondays. I stared at the evidence. Sophie wasn't even special in her deception. She was a recurring appointment in someone else's calendar of infidelity. The blonde, the redhead, who are they? Jennifer Reeves, accounting manager at Meridian, married, 2 kids. The redhead is Teresa Foster, a pharmaceutical sales rep who thinks David is her exclusive boyfriend. They don't know about each other? No indication they do. David keeps them completely separate. Different hotels, different cover stories, different days. But someone knew. Monica knew. Monica's investigator documented everything for 6 months. She's building a case for custody modification and increased support. The photos she sent you were a small sample. She has hundreds. Why send them to me anonymously? My guess? Conscience. Or strategy. If you file for divorce, it strengthens her case. Multiple families destroyed by David's behavior pattern. Carla pulled out another set of documents. There's more. I accessed Sophie's work emails through, let's call it creative means. David has been coaching her. Look. She showed me printed emails. David writing to Sophie. Remember, Tuesday's argument needs to seem organic. Start with mild irritation about something trivial. Build to previous resentments. Exit at peak emotion. I'll be waiting. Sophie's reply, getting better at the tears. Acting classes paying off. Acting classes? My voice sounded hollow. Online courses, charged to a credit card you don't know about. She's been studying emotional authenticity, method acting, accessing genuine feeling for artificial moments. She's been training to fake fights convincingly. I read more emails, each one a knife between ribs. David suggesting the sister story, advising on fight escalation, even providing scripts for certain arguments. They'd turned my marriage into a theater production, with me as the unwitting audience. There's a journal, too, Carla continued. She keeps it in her car, hidden behind the spare tire panel. She showed me photocopies. Sophie's handwriting, documenting our marriage's destruction like a scientist recording experiment results. Money fights. Good for 2 days, 3 if I cry about feeling unappreciated. Parenting disagreements. 2 days max, unless I invoke my mother's death. In-law issues. Golden ticket. 3 to 4 days easily. Work stress overlap. Risky. Might inspire too much sympathy. There were notes in margins. Don't mention divorce. Too final. Tears at 20-minute mark. Pack the red lingerie. Remember to seem reluctant to leave. She's been workshopping your fights, Carla said unnecessarily, refining them for maximum efficiency. How long? I asked. How long has this been going on? Based on the patterns, at least 3 years, possibly longer, but that's when the current system started. Before that, there might have been traditional affairs, but this scheduled arrangement with manufactured fights began 3 years ago. 3 years. Over 100 nights of Sophie supposedly at Patricia's, actually in hotel rooms. 36 staged fights, each one carefully crafted to seem spontaneous. Thousands of lies, small and large, woven into the fabric of our daily life. There's something else, Carla said, pulling out a final set of documents. Sophie has accomplices, unwitting ones. She showed me screenshots from a group chat called Sophie's Support Squad. 5 of Sophie's friends, coordinating alibis. Told Russell you were at book club. Melissa. If he asks, you were with me until 11. Janet. Covered for you at yoga. Said you were in the bathroom when he called? Amy. They thought they were protecting an emotionally abused woman, helping her escape a controlling husband. Sophie had painted me as difficult but not abusive, neglectful but not cruel. Just bad enough to justify her need for space, not bad enough to warrant intervention. She's created an entire support system based on lies, Carla observed. These women think they're helping a friend in need. I thought about the times I'd run into these women at the store, the school, around town, the slightly pitying looks, the careful friendliness. They thought I was the problem. What do I do? I asked. That depends on what you want. Divorce, revenge, reconciliation. Reconciliation? I laughed bitterly. How could I reconcile with someone I don't even know? The woman I married doesn't exist. Then you need a lawyer and a strategy. Sophie has been preparing for 3 years whether she knows it or not. She has alibis, supporters, a victim narrative ready to deploy. You need to be smarter. I want her to know that I know. I want her to understand that her entire performance has been exposed. Carla smiled for the first time. Then we need to script your own performance. Turn her theater against her. That weekend, Sophie attempted another fight. She'd made a hotel reservation. I knew because I'd seen the charge on her secret credit card statement that Carla had accessed. The Fairmont Scottsdale, 2 nights, Thursday and Friday. Wednesday evening, she started her routine. The trigger this time was household chores. She complained about having to do everything, maintaining the house while working full-time. Classic setup. Legitimate grievance escalated to relationship-ending crisis. I'm drowning here, Russell, she said, gesturing at the dishwasher I hadn't emptied. You don't see me. You don't see how hard I work to keep this family functioning. In the past, I would have defended myself, pointed out my contributions, and the fight would escalate from there. Instead, I agreed completely. You're absolutely right, I said calmly. I've been taking you for granted. Tell me what you need. Sophie blinked, visibly recalibrating. What? Make a list. Everything you do, everything you need help with. We'll divide it fairly. Maybe we should get a housekeeper too. Take some pressure off. That's not... You're missing the point. What's the point? Help me understand. She struggled, improvising now that her script had been disrupted. It's not about the chores. It's about respect, partnership. I agree. So let's be partners. Let's solve this together. Sophie's frustration was palpable. She tried another angle. You always do this. You act reasonable when I'm upset, making me look like the crazy one. You're not crazy. Your feelings are valid. I'm listening. She stood there, mouth open, no words coming. The fight required my participation to work, and I wasn't playing my role. Finally, she burst into tears. Real ones, I think, born of frustration rather than performance. I need space. I can't do this right now. Take all the space you need, I said gently. The guest room is made up. Or if you need to leave the house, I understand. But Sophie, I think we should talk about this with Dr. Markov before making any big decisions. I'm going to Patricia's. Okay, but I should tell you, I called Patricia earlier to plan a surprise for you, a spa weekend for you two. She mentioned she hasn't seen you since Christmas. The color drained from Sophie's face. You called Patricia? I wanted to do something nice. Show you I appreciate everything you do. Patricia was confused, though. She seems to think you haven't been staying there during our cooling-off periods. Sophie's mind was racing. I could see it. Calculating whether to confess, to lie, to deflect. Sometimes I just drive around, she said finally. Or get a hotel. I'm too embarrassed to tell Patricia about our problems. Which hotels? I asked innocently. Maybe we could have a romantic getaway at one, reclaim the space with positive memories. I don't remember, just random places. Like the Rosewood, the Marriott downtown, the Hilton by the airport. Each name hit like a physical blow. Sophie sank into a chair. How do you know? I pulled out one photo, just one, and placed it on the table. Sophie entering the Rosewood on August 30th. Who took this? She whispered. Does it matter? What matters is that I know. I know about the Tuesday through Thursday schedule. I know about David. I know about all of it. Sophie stared at the photo, and I watched her cycle through emotions: fear, calculation, indignation, and finally, surprisingly, relief. Thank God, she said quietly. I'm so tired of pretending. It wasn't what I'd expected. Pretending? All of it. The fights, the makeup, the marriage. I've been performing for so long I don't know who I am anymore. Then why not just leave? Why the elaborate deception? Sophie laughed bitterly. Leave and go where? With what? David doesn't want a real relationship. He wants scheduled appointments. You provide stability, a home, a father for Tyler. I needed both lives. And I needed a real wife, not a performance. You got one. The woman who comes home every night, makes dinner, helps with homework, that's real. The passion just happens to be elsewhere. The casualness of it, the easy admission, was more shocking than discovery. How can you compartmentalize like that? Practice, Sophie said simply. 3 years of practice. We sat at our kitchen table like strangers, the photo between us like evidence at a trial. Sophie had stopped crying, stopped performing. For maybe the first time in years, she seemed genuinely present. When did it start? I asked. The affair? Or the system? There's a difference, Sophie nodded. David and I started 4 years ago. Just attraction at first, some flirting at work events. Then one night after a product launch party, we kissed in the parking garage. It escalated from there. And the staged fights? That was David's idea. He's very structured. He doesn't like chaos or unpredictability. He wanted scheduled time, not random stolen moments. He helped me figure out how to create regular windows. The sister story, also David. He said it was plausible, repeatable, family obligation that you couldn't question without seeming insensitive. I thought about all the times I'd wished Sophie had a better relationship with Patricia, had encouraged her to spend time with her sister. I'd been enabling my own deception. The other women, Jennifer and Teresa, do you know about them? Sophie's composure cracked slightly. What other women? I pulled out the other photos Carla had given me, spreading them across the table. David with the blonde, with the redhead, entering the same hotels on different days. Sophie studied them, her face hardening. That's why he was so specific about days. Tuesday through Thursday, never deviation. She laughed, but it was hollow. I'm not even his only affair. I'm his midweek appointment. How does that feel? Like poetic justice, I suppose. The cheater being cheated on. She looked at me directly. Are you recording this? Number should I be? A better man would. For the divorce? I haven't decided about divorce yet. Sophie looked genuinely surprised. You'd consider staying? After this? I'm considering everything. Our son, our life, 12 years of marriage. Not all of it was fake, was it? No, Sophie admitted. The early years were real. Before Tyler was born, that first apartment on Mill Avenue, struggling with money but happy. That was real. What changed? Sophie was quiet for a long moment. I did. Or maybe I just finally became who I always was. Someone who needs more than domestic stability. David offered excitement, danger, passion, the planning, the deception, the risk. It made me feel alive. And our marriage made you feel dead? Not dead, just asleep, going through motions. Every day the same conversations, the same dinners, the same routines. Even our fights were predictable until I started scripting them. So you created chaos. I created controlled chaos, managed excitement, scheduled passion. She smiled ruefully. I sound like a sociopath, don't I? You sound like someone I don't know. That's because you don't? You know the wife character I play. Devoted but occasionally overwhelmed Sophie who needs her sister's support to cope with marital stress. But that's not who I am. Then who are you? Sophie considered this. I honestly don't know anymore. I've been performing so long I've lost track of what's genuine. Tyler's footsteps on the stairs interrupted us. We both shifted into parent mode, The photo disappeared, normal expressions arranged. Our son grabbed a soda from the fridge, oblivious to the destruction of his family happening at the kitchen table. Studying? Sophie asked, her voice perfectly maternal. Done. Can I game for an hour? Sure, I said. But just an hour. School tomorrow. Tyler left, and we sat in the strange silence of conspirators. We're good at this, Sophie observed, pretending everything's fine. We've had practice, 3 years for you, a few days for me. What happens now? Now I need time to think. Real thinking, not perform thinking at a hotel. Sophie stood. I'll sleep in the guest room. No more hotels? Not tonight. David's with Jennifer anyway. Fridays are her days. The casual knowledge of the schedule, the easy acceptance of sharing, told me everything about who Sophie had become, or who she'd always been. Over the next week, I continued meeting with Carla while maintaining the facade at home. She uncovered more details, each one adding to the massive deception Sophie had constructed. There were the acting classes, $800 worth of online courses in emotional authenticity and method acting for real life. Sophie had studied how to cry on cue, how to escalate anger naturally, how to make her voice break at exactly the right moment for maximum impact. There were practice videos on her cloud storage, Sophie recording herself performing arguments. You never consider my feelings, she'd rage at the camera, then immediately review the playback, adjust her delivery, try again. Dozens of these rehearsals, refining her performance like an actress preparing for a crucial audition. There was the financial fraud. Beyond the secret credit card, Sophie had been siphoning money from our joint accounts in small amounts. 50 here, 100 there, cash back at grocery stores, inflated expense reports at work. Over 3 years, she'd accumulated nearly $50,000 in a separate account I'd never known existed. She's been planning an exit strategy, Carla explained. The account's not just for hotels, it's escape money. She's planning to leave? Eventually, my guess is when Tyler graduates. 3 more years of this pattern, then she'll have enough saved to start over. There was the support network Sophie had cultivated. Beyond the Sophie support squad, she'd been seeing a therapist. Not Dr. Markov, but someone else, Dr. Jennifer Huang. According to the notes Carla had somehow obtained, Sophie had been presenting herself as trapped in an emotionally stifling marriage, married to a man who couldn't meet her emotional needs. She's been building a case, Carla said, creating a paper trail that paints her as the victim if divorce happens. But she's the one having affairs? Affairs she's framed as seeking emotional connection absent from her marriage. She's very smart, your wife. She's prepared for multiple scenarios. The most disturbing discovery was a draft email on Sophie's computer, unsent but saved, addressed to me. It was a confession of sorts, but twisted, blaming me for driving her to affairs through emotional neglect. It painted her deceptions as desperate attempts to save our marriage by finding fulfillment elsewhere rather than leaving entirely. She'll send this if you confront her publicly, Carla predicted. Turn herself into the sympathetic figure, the woman who tried everything to save her family. What do you recommend? Be smarter, document everything, build your own case, then control the narrative when you're ready to act. I started with Dr. Markov. I made a solo appointment, bringing all of Carla's evidence. The therapist's professional composure cracked as she reviewed the photos, emails, journal entries. I've been treating fiction, she said quietly. 3 years of couples therapy based on manufactured problems. Sophie used you to legitimize her narrative. Every session gave her more credibility, more ammunition. Dr. Markov removed her glasses, rubbing her eyes. This is a severe ethical violation. Using therapy as a tool for deception, making me an unwitting accomplice to emotional abuse. Can you document that? The deception, I mean? I can document the contradictions between what Sophie reported and what actually occurred. My notes from our sessions compared to this evidence show clear patterns of manipulation. She paused. This is highly unusual, but given the circumstances, I believe I have an obligation to record the truth. Would you be willing to continue our couples therapy, knowing what you know? Dr. Markov considered this. That would be ethically complex. But if Sophie doesn't know that I know, I could document her ongoing deceptions, create a clinical record of manipulation in real time. She has another therapy session scheduled for Friday. She's planning another fight, another hotel stay. Then we should be prepared. I also met with Monica Castell. David's ex-wife was elegant, bitter, and surprisingly sympathetic when Carla arranged our meeting at a discreet restaurant in Paradise Valley. I debated sending those photos for weeks, Monica admitted over wine. Part of me wanted you to stay ignorant, keep David distracted, but I couldn't be that cruel. How long have you known? 6 months. I hired the investigator because David was pushing for more custody time with our daughters. I suspected he had ulterior motives, more time for his affairs if the girls were with me, but I never imagined the scope. Monica showed me her complete file. Hundreds of photos, documented patterns, even audio recordings from hotel lobbies. David had been running his rotation for at least 3 years, possibly longer. Your wife isn't special to him, Monica said bluntly. She's Tuesday Sophie. Jennifer is weekend Jennifer. Teresa is Monday Teresa. He has them scheduled in his phone like business meetings. Do the others know? Jennifer might suspect. She's married too, probably compartmentalizing like Sophie. Teresa has no idea. She posts about her boyfriend on social media, thinks they're building toward moving in together. Why not expose him publicly? Because I need to win custody first. If I go nuclear now, David will claim vindictive ex-wife. But if multiple families discover the truth independently, if there's a pattern of deception affecting children, Monica smiled coldly. Then I win everything. You're using me. We're using each other. You want truth and justice. I want my daughters away from their father's influence. Our interests align. She was right. Monica provided me with contact information for Jennifer's husband and Teresa, though I wasn't ready to use it yet. First, I needed to position myself strategically. The next staged fight came exactly on schedule. Thursday evening, Sophie started probing for triggers. She complained about Tyler's tennis coach, the cost of lessons, my failure to attend his last match. When I didn't engage, she shifted to money concerns, then household management, increasingly desperate to find an argument point. Finally, she went nuclear. I think you're having an affair. It was so unexpected, so ironically twisted, that I actually laughed. What? You're distant, secretive, on your phone constantly, working late. She was building momentum, finding her rhythm. I can feel you pulling away from me. Sophie, I'm not having an affair. Then explain the changes. Explain why you barely touch me anymore. That was true. Since discovering her deception, physical intimacy had become impossible. But she was weaponizing it, turning my response to her betrayal into evidence of my own. Maybe we should discuss this with Dr. Markov, I suggested. I don't need therapy to know my husband is cheating. Sophie's tears were perfect, right on schedule. I need space to think about our future. Then let's go to Dr. Markov together. Emergency session. She can fit us in tonight. Sophie hadn't expected this. Tonight? It's 8 p.m. I already called. She's waiting for us. Unless you'd rather go to Patricia's instead? The trap was elegant. Sophie couldn't refuse emergency counseling without seeming uncommitted to saving our marriage. But attending would prevent her hotel rendezvous with David. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. Let's go. Dr. Markov's office felt different at night. The usual soft lighting seemed harsh, the comfortable chairs less welcoming. Sophie sat rigidly, arms crossed, clearly furious about the disrupted plans. Thank you for seeing us so late, I began. When couples are in crisis, immediate intervention is crucial, Dr. Markov replied smoothly. Sophie, Russell says you're concerned about infidelity. Sophie launched into her performance. My distance, my secretiveness, her intuition that something was wrong. Dr. Markov took notes, occasionally asking for specific examples. And how do you respond to Sophie's concerns, Russell? I'm not having an affair, I said simply, but I understand why Sophie might project that fear. Project? Sophie's voice sharp. What's that supposed to mean? Sometimes we accuse others of what we're guilty of ourselves. The room went silent. Sophie stared at me, calculating whether I was speaking generally or specifically. That's a serious implication, Doctor, Markov observed neutrally. It's not an implication. It's Psychology 101, projection as defense mechanism. Sophie shifted tactics. This is exactly what I mean. He turns everything around, makes me the villain. I can't express concerns without being accused of something. Have you been accused of something? Dr. Markov asked. No, I'm just saying. He deflects. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, I'd like to address Sophie's concerns directly. Here's my location history for the past month. Every working late was at the construction site, verified by security logs. Every evening out was with Tyler at practice or with my brother Marcus. I showed the phone to Dr. Markov, who made notes. Sophie couldn't object without seeming unreasonable. Now, Sophie, I continued, would you be willing to share your location history? To ease my concerns? What concerns? You just said you're not suspicious. But transparency goes both ways in marriage, doesn't it? Sophie clutched her phone. This is controlling behavior, demanding to surveillance each other. You literally just accuse me of having an affair based on being distant. I'm offering complete transparency. Why won't you? Dr. Markov watched this like a tennis match, documenting every exchange. Sophie stood abruptly. I don't have to justify myself. This is abusive. Sitting in therapy discussing our marriage is abusive? I asked mildly. Ambushing me with demands is like accusing me of affairs to justify leaving for 3 days? Sophie froze. The accusation hung in the air, too specific to be hypothetical. I think, Dr. Markov said carefully, we should explore this pattern. Sophie, you've mentioned needing space during conflicts. Where do you typically go? My sister's, Sophie said automatically. Patricia's house in Scottsdale? Yes. And Patricia can verify these stays? It was the critical moment. Sophie could lie, but she knew I might have already contacted Patricia. Or she could admit partial truth, try to control the narrative. Sometimes I just drive, she said finally, or get a hotel to think. Which hotels? Dr. Markov asked, pen poised. Sophie named a few random chains, not the ones from the photos. She was still lying, just adjusting the lies. I pulled out the photos, all 17, spreading them across Dr. Markov's coffee table like tarot cards revealing the future. These hotels? I asked quietly. Sophie stared at the evidence, her face cycling through emotions. Dr. Markov leaned forward, studying the images. Sophie, the therapist said gently, would you like to explain? Those could be anyone, Sophie whispered. They're dated, I said. Every single one corresponds to a fight, a trip to Patricia's that never happened. You had me followed? Number someone else did. Someone who was following David Castell. At David's name, Sophie's composure shattered entirely. Not theatrical tears, but real shock, real fear. How much do you know? Everything. The rotation schedule, the acting classes, the journal in your car, the practiced arguments, the financial fraud, everything. Dr. Markov was writing rapidly, documenting Sophie's visible confirmation of each element. I want a lawyer, Sophie said. We're in therapy, not court, doctor, Markov reminded her. Though this session is being documented as part of your treatment record. Sophie looked between us, understanding dawning. You knew, both of you. This whole session was staged. Ironic, isn't it? I said. You're upset about us staging something? Sophie left the session, but not for a hotel. She drove home, where I found her in our bedroom, packing methodically. Not the dramatic throwing of clothes that accompanied fake fights, but careful folding, organized sorting. Where will you go? I asked from the doorway. Does it matter? Tyler will want to know. She paused, holding one of the dresses she'd worn to David's hotels. I suppose Patricia's is out as an excuse now. Just tell him the truth, or a version of it. We're separating, working through issues. The truth, Sophie laughed bitterly. I don't even know what that is anymore. It's what you do when you're not performing. She continued packing. I watched, feeling strangely empty. No anger, no sadness, just hollow recognition that the woman I'd married had never really existed. For what it's worth, Sophie said, I did love you. In the beginning, before I knew what I was capable of. Capable of? Living multiple lives, being multiple people. Some people are built for monogamy, for stability. I'm not. I tried to be, but it was like wearing a costume that never fit right. So you created a costume that did fit. The devoted wife with the occasionally difficult marriage who needs space. It was better than leaving. Tyler needed stability. Tyler needed honesty. No 15-year-old needs that kind of honesty about his mother. She zipped the suitcase, then sat on our bed. The bed where we'd conceived Tyler, where she'd comforted me when my father died, where she'd planned her escapes while I slept beside her. What happens now? She asked. Divorce, division of assets, custody arrangements, the usual destruction. Will you tell everyone? About David, the hotels, all of it. Will you fight me for custody? Sophie considered this. Number Tyler should stay with you. I'm not built for full-time motherhood. I can do alternate weekends, some dinners. The performance of motherhood, not the daily reality. Then I won't broadcast your affairs. We'll cite irreconcilable differences. Generous of you. Practical. Tyler doesn't need the details. Your friends don't need the humiliation. David's already facing his own reckoning with Monica. Sophie's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and I saw David's name before she darkened the screen. He doesn't know you know? I asked. Number? He's wondering why I missed tonight. Probably thinks I couldn't get away. Are you going to tell him? Why would I? It's Thursday night. He has Jennifer tomorrow through Sunday. Teresa on Monday. I won't see him until Tuesday, assuming I want to see him at all. You'd continue, knowing about the others? Sophie shrugged. We're all getting what we want from the arrangement. David gets variety without commitment. The women get excitement without disrupting their primary lives. Everyone's lying to everyone. At least now I know the scope of it. That's incredibly depressing. That's incredibly honest. The first honest thing in our marriage in years? Sophie moved out that night, taking her suitcases to an extended stay hotel, a different chain than her David meetings. I heard her on the phone with Patricia, finally telling her sister a version of the truth. Marital problems, temporary separation, need for real space this time. Tyler took it harder than expected. He came to my room after Sophie left, standing in the doorway like he had as a child during thunderstorms. Is she coming back? He asked. I don't know. Probably not. Was it the fights? The constant leaving and coming back? That was part of it. Tyler sat on the bed where his mother had just been. I know there's more. I'm not stupid. The patterns were too regular. Every 6 weeks like clockwork. Same fights, same duration away, same weird energy when she came back. How long have you noticed? About a year. Started tracking it in my phone. Day of fight, trigger topic, length of absence. It was almost algorithmic. Why didn't you say anything? Tyler shrugged, 15 years old but suddenly seeming older. What would I say? Mom's fights seem scheduled? You both seemed committed to the pattern. I figured it was some weird marriage thing I didn't understand. It was definitely weird. Was she seeing someone? I looked at my son, weighing honesty against protection. Yes. The whole time? During all those Patricia visits? Yes. Tyler nodded, unsurprised. That makes more sense than the alternative. Which was? That you guys actually needed that much space from each other. That would mean the marriage was even worse than affairs. We sat quietly, father and son processing the implosion of our family structure. Are you okay? Tyler asked eventually. I will be. Are you? I think so. It's actually better knowing it was fake than thinking it was real and that broken. The divorce proceedings began the following week. Sophie had hired an attorney, but true to her word, didn't fight for primary custody. The financial negotiations were more complex. Sophie's secret account was discovered during mandatory disclosure, as was the credit card, the acting classes, the hotel charges. Her attorney tried to frame them as marital expenses, money spent trying to save the marriage through necessary space. My attorney, recommended by James, laughed at that. She documented everything in that journal. It's clear fraud. We could pursue criminal charges. I just want it over. We settled on Sophie, keeping her secret account, but forfeiting claim to half the house value. She'd get 30% of our other assets, no alimony given her salary, and the documented deception. Tyler would live with me, visit Sophie alternate weekends and Wednesday dinners. The meeting where we signed papers was surreal. Sophie dressed professionally, played the role of regretful but realistic divorcee. Only I could see the performance, the careful modulation of sadness and acceptance. I hope we can be friends, she said as we left the law office. For Tyler's sake. We can be co-parents. That's enough. Fair. As she walked to her car, her phone rang. I heard her answer, voice shifting to something lighter. David? Yes, Tuesday's perfect. The usual place. She was still in the rotation, still performing, still scheduled. Monica Castell contacted me a month later. David had lost his custody battle, been ordered to pay increased support, and had his visitation reduced to supervised meetings only. The evidence of his systematic affairs, the hotel receipts, the impact on multiple families had devastated his case. He's moving to San Diego, Monica informed me over coffee. Starting over with a new company, new city, new rotation probably. Is Sophie going with him? Number he didn't ask. She was Tuesday. Sophie here, but he'll find a new Tuesday Sophie there. Men like David don't form attachments. They collect experiences. And women like Sophie? Monica considered this. I think Sophie got addicted to the drama of deception more than David himself. She'll find another complicated situation. Maybe a married man, maybe multiple men. But always complex, always requiring performance and planning. She was right. Through Tyler, I learned Sophie was dating someone new within 3 months. Another executive, recently separated, with complicated custody arrangements and specific windows of availability. The pattern continuing with a different cast. Jennifer from accounting divorced her husband and left Phoenix entirely. Teresa, the Monday woman, took it the hardest. She genuinely believed David loved her, was building toward a future. She successfully sued him for emotional fraud, using the evidence Monica had gathered. The judgment was $50,000, paid over 5 years. The Sophie support squad dissolved in confusion and recrimination. When word spread about the affairs, inevitably in a city like Phoenix, her friends felt betrayed and manipulated. They'd been covering for a cheater, not protecting an abuse victim. Some reached out to apologize to me. Others simply vanished from both our lives. Melissa, who'd been Sophie's primary alibi, sent me a long email. I feel like an idiot. All those times I covered for her, thinking I was helping her escape a bad situation. She played me perfectly. Every story about your controlling nature, your emotional distance, I bought it all. I'm sorry for my part in this. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Dr. Markov published a professional paper 6 months after our divorce, with all identifying details changed. Therapeutic manipulation, a case study in manufactured crisis, became required reading in several marriage counseling programs. She sent me a copy with a note. Your experience, while painful, is contributing to better therapeutic practices. Thank you for your courage in exposing the truth. I started dating a year after the divorce. Sarah was another divorced parent from Tyler's school, cautious and deliberately transparent. She'd been cheated on too, though in a more conventional way. We bonded over our need to verify everything, our insistence on phone transparency, our slightly paranoid attention to patterns. I Google everyone now, she admitted on our third date. Check social media, verify stories, look for inconsistencies. I track patterns, I admitted back. Regular schedules, repeated excuses. any sign of performance. "We're damaged," she laughed. "We're careful," I corrected. We moved slowly, both of us watching for red flags, for signs of deception. It was exhausting but necessary. Trust, once shattered, rebuilds slowly and never completely. Tyler adjusted better than expected. He spent alternate weekends with Sophie in her new apartment, returning with stories of her latest drama. She was taking actual acting classes now, community theater, finally acknowledging her need to perform. "She's good," Tyler told me after watching her in a local production. "Really convincing on stage." "She always was." "Yeah, but now at least everyone knows it's a performance." 3 years have passed since that manila envelope arrived. I'm remarried now, to Sarah. Our arguments are real, about mundane things like dishes and schedules, and whose turn it is to drive Tyler to practice. We resolve them through actual communication, sometimes messy, never scripted. It's boring and wonderful. Sophie remains unmarried but never alone. She cycles through relationships with the same pattern: intense beginnings, complicated middles, dramatic endings. Tyler says she seems happy in her chaos, finally living authentically as someone who needs complexity and performance. I kept one photo from that envelope, Sophie entering the Rosewood Hotel on August 30th, looking excited and alive. Not as a trophy or reminder of pain, but as proof that people can surprise you even after 12 years. That someone can share your bed, raise your child, know your deepest fears, and still be a complete stranger. The cooling off periods are over. My life has found a steady temperature, neither the explosive heat of staged conflicts nor the false peace of scheduled reconciliations. Just the warm stability of genuine connection with someone who argues honestly, apologizes sincerely, and has never once suggested visiting a sister for perspective. Sometimes I drive past the hotels from the photos. The Rosewood has been renovated, the Marriott changed brands. The physical spaces where Sophie performed her double life have been transformed, like the marriage they helped destroy. But I know similar dramas play out in the new rooms. Other spouses with elaborate deceptions, other cooling off periods that aren't about cooling off at all. Carla Rodriguez called me last month. She'd been hired by another suspicious spouse, found another elaborate system of deception. "You'd be amazed how common this is," she said. "The staged fights, the scheduled affairs, the supporting casts of unwitting accomplices. Your Sophie wasn't unique." That's oddly comforting. Or terrifying. Depends on your perspective. I chose comforting. Knowing Sophie's deception wasn't personal, wasn't about my failures as a husband, but about her nature as someone who needed multiple lives, multiple selves, multiple stages. Tyler graduates next year. He's studying engineering, drawn to the certainty of physics and math. "No performance in structural analysis," he says. "A beam either bears the load or it doesn't. No interpretation, no alternative facts." Sophie will attend his graduation. She'll play the proud mother perfectly, maybe even feel it genuinely in that moment. But Tyler and I will know we're watching a performance, appreciating it for what it is without mistaking it for something else. The anonymous envelope changed everything, but not in the way Sophie's destruction had. It didn't create chaos for excitement. It revealed truth hidden beneath years of carefully orchestrated lies. Monica Castell, in her own pain and fury, gave me the gift of clarity. Some people need drama like others need oxygen. They create storms to feel alive, manufacture crises to avoid mundane reality. Sophie had turned our marriage into her personal theater, and I'd been cast in a role I never auditioned for: the stable, oblivious husband who provided the foundation for her elaborate deceptions. But I learned that truth has its own power. Documentation beats performance. Reality, however painful, surpasses even the most convincing fiction. And sometimes the most dramatic thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone else's drama. The cooling off periods weren't about cooling off. They were about heating up, about passion performed on schedule, about a woman who needed complexity like others need simplicity. Sophie had weaponized our conflicts, monetized our pain, and scheduled our reconciliations around someone else's calendar. Every tear had been practiced in front of a mirror. Every stormy exit had been planned days in advance. Every return had been timed to the hour, designed to seem like breakthrough rather than intermission. The truth is, some people prefer performance to presence. They'd rather star in their own drama than participate in a real relationship. They need the script, the audience, the reviews. They need to know they're convincing in their role, even if the role is wife, mother, partner. Sophie still performs somewhere, I'm sure. New stages, new audiences, new complicated situations requiring careful choreography. Maybe she's found someone who appreciates the performance, who knows it's fake but enjoys the show anyway. Or maybe she's alone in her apartment, rehearsing arguments with no one to perform them for, packing bags with nowhere to go, creating conflicts in empty rooms where no one waits to be convinced. I don't know. I don't need to know. My cooling off period from Sophie's cooling off periods is permanent. The temperature of my life remains steady now, sustainable, genuinely warm, occasionally hot with real anger or passion, but never performing those emotions for an ulterior purpose. The manila envelope sits in my safe deposit box now. Evidence of evidence. Proof that someone was watching the watcher. 17 photographs that revealed 17 lies, which revealed hundreds more, which revealed a truth I'd never suspected. I'd been married to a ghost, a projection, a character in someone else's play. But I survived the performance. I found my way off stage. And now, in my real life with Sarah, with Tyler growing into a man who values truth over drama, I can appreciate the artistry of Sophie's deception without wanting any part of it. The cooling off periods are over. The performance has ended. The truth, mundane and unscripted as it might be, has finally begun.